We are going to be talking about red flags today. Red flags for extended school year. The other thing that we'll be talking about are 3 shocking truths about extended school year that I was even shocked when I first learned of these several years ago. So, welcome to our weekly Art of Advocacy show. I'm Charmaine Tanner. I'm a parent, a retired teacher, and author of a #1 best-selling book on Amazon. And I'm also a professional advocate and the host of our weekly show. So, have you ever heard this at an IEP meeting? Oh, extended school year. Oh, yeah, we do that. We start on June 10th. We take the week of July 4th off. We finish the next week. It's Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 11:30. Oh, it's going to be in a different building and it will be with a different teacher. But that's our extended school year program. Well, pull out your red flag if you hear that. Because extended school year services are supposed to be individualized, just like your child's services throughout the school year. So, hey, we've got Patrick from Indiana here. Welcome. Yes, I love it when you can say hi and let us know where you're watching from. It's always interesting to see the people from around the country. And I hope that you'll be engaged in a conversation, because I don't want this just to be a presentation that I'm doing for you, but we'll pretend like we're sitting together in a coffee shop having a conversation. So glad you're here. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is tomorrow I'm going to be having a pretty spectacular masterclass. And so if you would like information about that, just let me know in the comments and I can circle back and give you more information about our Advocacy Masterclass. It's free tomorrow at noon. So let's get into our talk about extended school year. And let me hide these other things here. So what we're going to be talking about today is how extended school year is not a one size fits all. Actually, it's a one size doesn't fit hardly anybody sometimes, right? And it needs to be individualized, just like the rest of your child's IEP needs to be individualized and really crafted to what your child's strengths and needs are. Extended school year services need to be individualized also. So today I'm going to be giving you some advocacy tips for how to make sure that you get what your child needs for extended school year. Now, usually the springtime is when there are additional IEP meetings scheduled, and it's a time that you can sit down and talk with your team, the IEP team, about extended school year services. However, what I have found is some parents don't even realize, I think teachers maybe don't realize either, that extended school year services are something that needs to be talked about at an IEP meeting. As an advocate, I attend many IEP meetings with families in person if they live close enough, or through Skype or a phone conference call. But so often what I hear is, oh, your child's not eligible for ESY, let's move on. So that's one of those red flags that we want to make sure we take action with, and that doesn't happen. You should be sitting down with your IEP team, usually in the springtime, to look at if your child's going to qualify for extended school year services or not. And I do have a ebook that I wrote about ESY, One Size Doesn't Fit All. This is the bit.ly link for it, and I'll also put this link in the description of the post afterwards. But this book goes into the points that we're going to cover today, plus a little bit more detail. So you might want to get that. It's free, and you just click on that link and you will be able to download it. I think another misconception that parents especially have is that ESY is like summer school, and ESY does not equal summer school. So I think, sometimes we think about when we were in school, and sometimes our parents made us go to summer school to, kind of catch up on our reading skills. Or if we were in high school, maybe we went to summer school to make sure we had enough credits in the different areas, right? But extended school year services are really different than summer school. Extended school year services are only available for students on IEPs. So if your child has a 504 plan, extended school year services wouldn't be something that the district could offer your child. Extended school year services are something that usually most states say to maintain skills that your child has learned. But we'll talk in a few minutes about some of the other criteria that states add that you can look at. I think typically we think of regression and recoupment, but you might be surprised that there are other criteria also for extended school year. So just know that it is different than your typical school year or summer school. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about 5 red flags and 3 shocking truths. Now, the first red flag you might see is that the IEP form already is marked no for ESY. And it's like, what? I mean, this is something else that I see, and it's almost like the computer is set up to like no as the default. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and she is in a district where when she was talking about extended school year for her son, they were saying, oh, no, we don't do that here. And I've actually heard that in a meeting myself. And come to find out, sometimes that software is programmed and no is just a default thing, a default answer. But this should be a discussion. It should not be predetermined before you go to the meeting whether or not your child can receive extended school year services. So let me know. Oh, so April's saying, yeah, that's what our district told us. So yeah, it's pretty frustrating. Brandy is here from Orleans, Indiana. Maria says most students are not considered for ESY. And you're right, Maria. And that's something that we want to change because that's not in our kids' best interests. And sometimes it takes parents for us to help the staff understand exactly what extended school year services are about. So we need to make sure that there's a discussion for that and it's not predetermined. So if that happens, what action could you take? Because we know we need to take action. One of the things that you could do is email the special education teacher and request in writing for an IEP meeting to talk about extended school year. So the other thing I wanted to mention is if you've already had a discussion with your district about extended school year and they are of the opinion that no, your child doesn't qualify, know that it's not too late. You still have some time before school ends. So email and request another meeting because you're going to be learning some things today that you might not have known and that could make a difference for what your child is eligible for. So I also want to say hi to Paula. She lives in Elk Grove, California. And April is from Austin, Texas. And April, I've spoken a few times at the Inclusion Works conference down there in Austin. But now I think they've been having them kind of in other cities around the state of Texas. So let's look at the next red flag. This, and it would help if I showed it to you. So this is when the school reports that your child has made adequate progress on IEP goals, and they don't really qualify for extended school year services. So sometimes there's not really much objective data to show that, what amount of progress has been made. So there is an action step that you can take, and that is for the staff to share with you the data that they're talking about that they collected to measure progress. So, it's one of those things, I mean, you want to do it politely, but assertively sometimes, right? Is that you want to be able to see the information that the staff is using to make judgments on your child's made so much progress, they don't really need extended school year services. You want to be able to see that data that they've collected so you can ask questions, so you can understand it more. So instead of taking things at face value, and I think as parents, sometimes we think, well, that's what the special ed teacher said. I guess that's what we're supposed to do. But instead, it's okay to ask questions about it. I remember when my son was younger and we would take him often to the cardiologist for checkups, and the cardiologist would give us advice. And it's like, I don't know, I guess he's the cardiologist. He must know what he's talking about. But being the type of person that I am, when you research something, when you talk to other families, when you talk to some other, mom that's been in your place, you sometimes will notice, oh, maybe I should ask more questions. So make that part of your daily practice. Learn to ask more questions. And like I said, be polite about it, but you need to have a conversation and not just accept what they say. So does that make sense? The third red flag is that your child didn't show any regression or have any recoupment issues. So let's first look at what those words mean. So regression means losing skills, and recoupment means it takes a longer time than average to regain new skills. So regression and recoupment are two of the biggest factors that people use to determine whether or not your child is eligible for ESY services. And like I said, in a few minutes, we'll talk about actually there's more than just regression and recoupment. But regression is, if you have this long break from school, when your child comes back, are they going to have lost so many of the skills that they could do before that school break? Now, recoupment means they've lost the skills, plus it takes them more than, kind of a reasonable amount of time to regain those skills. Now, for most kids, we know if there's a long break in the school schedule, most kids are going to forget some things, but it usually doesn't take them that long to pick back up. For students on IEPs, where it does take a longer time, months maybe, to get back where they were before the break or vacation, that's something that you want to look at. for sure. So let me go back here. The action step that you can take is to check your state special education regulations, because each state has pretty much, the one criteria that most states, I think, have is the regression and recoupment. But there are some other factors that can be considered. And the best way for you to figure that out, to find that out, is to go to your state's Department of Education website. So you can type in, Colorado State Department of Education, and it will bring up a whole list of lots of education things. There's usually a tab for special education. And then there's usually a search bar, so you could type in extended school year services. You want to do the prep work and be prepared before you go to that ESY meeting to see what your state regulations say, because sometimes you'll be surprised about some of the things that are included in there. So let me take a moment here to bring up Jennifer's comments. She says, my 7-year-old daughter has been offered ESY since preschool, but I was told it would be the special day class and not a good placement for her. So we've declined that, but accepted OT and speech therapy. So that's interesting, Jennifer, because I know what you're talking about. Sometimes the way that the ESY services are described, it's like, why would I want that for my kid? And especially if you're looking for more inclusive placements and they're talking about, no, it's all kids on IEPs and they gather at this building and it's a teacher that your kid doesn't even know. And it's like, you probably don't really want that. Well, it's kind of like talking you out of something. But one, you have to recognize that when they describe this program, that's a predetermination of what extended school year should look like. Predetermination is a big no-no for districts to do. They can't decide ahead of time, this is what our program is going to look like. It has to be based on your child's individual needs, what's already in your child's IEP. So, and we'll talk about that in a little more depth in a moment. Let's see, I was just wanting to check and make sure. So April says, the teacher told me it was for retention of skills. They sneakily work on other skills though. Yeah, so, it gets back to that kind of notion of we figure out one way to do everything. Technically, most states say it's to maintain the skills that your child has learned throughout the year. But there are other things that they can work on also. And Jennifer says, polite but assertive. Exactly this. Yes, yes, yes. And as an advocate, that's, something that I've learned through experience as far as just the nuance of how you speak at IEP meetings, how you try to make your point, how you can help the teachers realize that this is a good choice for your child. I mean, there's almost like this whole psychology, right, of speaking at IEP meetings and making sure that you're heard and that it's not just token parent input. So keep your comments and questions coming. I love it. Love it. Let's go here because we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other factors and why you want to make sure that you're looking at your state regulations. So, for example, in Idaho, there is a clause in there in the state regulations that if your child is just kind of working on some new skills and they're just emerging, it's like, ooh, they're so close. And if we have a long break, that's probably going to hinder your child from picking up on those skills at a good level when they come back after the school break. So for people in Idaho, this is a link for the extended school year services. And if you are from another state, like we have lots of people from other states, if you need help finding your state regulations for your state about extended school year, just leave, a comment and I can help you find those, because that's a tool that you really need for your toolbox, is what your, specific state regulations are, not only on ESY, but everything else for part of the IEP meeting too, right? So let's carry on here. The other thing that Idaho has is they have this self-sufficiency clause. So if your child is learning some critical life skills and it would maybe impact them as far as, what level of independence they can have in their future, if they're learning things like, toileting, feeding, mobility, communication, dressing, self-help, social emotional skills, those in Idaho are just a few of the examples of critical life skills. And if your child is just starting to learn some of those, that can be reason enough to request extended school year services for your child. So all of these nuances you want to check out with your regulations. Again, if you just joined us, there's a free ebook that I wrote about ESY, One Size Doesn't Fit All. And this is the bit.ly link, and I'll post it in the comments when we're done. So if you're interested, you just click there and you will download your free ebook. I don't know why I have that again. So dates for ESY are already determined. That's a huge red flag. And that's an example that we gave earlier where the school district says, oh, we're going to have extended school year and it's going to start in the middle of June. It goes through the last week of July. We take July 4th off. Well, that's a predetermination if they're telling you those are going to be the dates for ESY. Because some of our kiddos might need additional help closer to when school is going to start up again. Some students might not need Monday through Thursday. Maybe they need just 2 or 3 days a week. Maybe someone needs 5 days a week. So those dates and the amount of time need to be individualized. And if the dates are already predetermined, that's one of your red flags you want to watch out for. So let us know in the comments, does your district usually tell you about what the dates are, or is there a choice in there of the dates that you can have for ESY? And just like the rest of your child's IEP is individualized for how much service time, how many days a week, that needs to carry over to extended school year. So no predetermination of dates. we don't want to accept that. So the action step that you could do instead, let me show you, is to email to remind the staff that ESY is to be individualized. And, the basic concept of always putting things in writing, and 2, then making a specific request for the team to meet again and talk about that. So even if your child has already had, the team has already decided on ESY services, it's not too late. You still have weeks left of school. make a request for another IEP meeting, and the one item on the agenda could be extended school year services. So always know that you can request a meeting and ask for that discussion. Now, a whole nother concept, which is kind of a different video, but if you make a request for extended school year services in the IEP meeting and you get told no, then you need to make sure that that's captured on what's called a prior written notice form. And if you want to know more about prior written notice forms, let me know in the comments, and I can come back and give you a link to a video that I've done about that. Because there's kind of like never-ending amount of stuff we can learn, right? The fifth red flag is that there's no inclusion for extended school year services. Aha! Let's see what action step you could take. One is to ask for a policy that says the least restrictive environment doesn't apply to extended school year. So this again is like a really effective, I call it like an advocacy mantra. When you are told something and it's like laid out as a matter of fact, like everybody knows this is the way it is, you want to politely but assertively say, I would love to see that policy that says, we don't have to consider the least restrictive environment for students for ESY services. I want to make sure that I understand this better. Sometimes there's no policy or regulation to back up what they have said. So again, it's, it's hard because you want to form those positive relationships, but it's like trust but verify, and you need to be in the position that you're verifying the information that you're being told. And it's not like teachers are trying to, be mean and not give your child what they need. Sometimes it's the teachers that don't understand exactly what the federal law and the regulations say. So you just need to be in a partnership with them and talk about things. Make sure that you look policies and regulations up and see if it really is what's going on, right? So the other thing is that's interesting, and let me see here. I'm not sure. Before we get to the 3 shocking truths, I was going to say something else about, so let me go back here. No inclusion. So just a few years ago, there was a court case in the eastern states in the Second Circuit Court District, and it in fact said that least restrictive environment doesn't take the summer off. If your child is included during the school year with, peers in a general education setting, then you also want to look at how is that going to work in extended school year if the only people there are other students on IEPs. So that's a conversation that you need to have. Now, here's a little trick. In Idaho, I used to live in Colorado for like 40 years, and now I'm in Idaho. In Idaho, it does say in the regulations that they don't have to offer inclusive services for ESY. So that is something I think that could be challenged in the state. Even though Idaho is out west, right? It's not in that Second Circuit Court District where the court ruled that, yes, inclusion has to be considered. You can actually use court cases in other districts and kind of help build your case. So depending on if you want to get involved with more policy making, when you look at your state regulations, if there's something in there and it's like, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't seem right, you could work on some advocacy steps to make changes. And I do have a couple of videos about that. So if you want a video about making policy changes and being active in that, state, local legislation actions, let me know in the comments. And I'm going to check and see, have you guys, yes, Patrick's here. So see, I need to be scrolling. So, oh, good. Look at you, how good you are. So here's a link for families from Indiana. This is the Indiana Department of Education ESY guide for schools to help make the determination. So cool. And that will be, that will stay right in our comments. So then you can come back if you're from Indiana, or if you have friends in Indiana, make sure that you share that with them. How cool. Thank you so much, Patrick. And Paula says, my district compared the time out of school for summer to winter break, told me that his regression and recoupment wasn't big enough to warrant ESY with any services. He only needed ESY, no OTPT, SLP, feeding. I had to really push for speech services. He is nonverbal. So Paula, and I owe you an email back because I know you had asked me some questions, so I'll get back with you. But yeah, that's the thing. It's like districts want to use data to show how much regression has occurred. So that can be tricky because sometimes it's like the data that they have is, school was out for 2 weeks for the winter holidays. He came back in January. It didn't seem like it took him, he hadn't lost many skills. It didn't seem like he had to pick them up. And that's where you want to, one, check the data that they take and see exactly how they're interpreting that, because one, most likely they didn't take any data, or two, it could be misinterpreted. Or three, you can say, okay, I agree. I looked at your data. You explained it. It seems like you didn't miss much after 2 weeks, but let's look at how long our summer break is. I mean, for some students, that's like 12 weeks. And we could probably predict that after a 12-week break, that amount of regression and the time to recoup those skills is going to be much greater than it was just for the 2 weeks. And then the other thing, Paula, is to look, I think you're in California, as to what California's manual and guidelines say, because that's where you're going to probably find some more oomph for your request and some more documentation that would help you make sure that your child gets what they need, right? And Anita, okay, good. So Anita says she's looking for ESY regulations for the state of Virginia. So this afternoon, Anita, I will look up on your website and see if I can find those for you and give you the link. Sometimes websites, as you know, can be like really crazy, like this maze of trying to get through them and figure out where things are. And because I work with a lot of families from different states, I've kind of learned how to navigate those State Department of Ed websites. So I'll be happy to look that up for you. And Jennifer says, wow, I didn't know the dates for ESY are supposed to be individualized. Yes. And that's like a wonderful golden nugget that you got right from being here today, Jennifer. So thanks for being here. And now you know more, and now you can do more. So another parent said that it's already approved for ESY, but they said they would need goals for it, and typically is once a week in addition to summer school. So how interesting. So I'm not sure if I'll pronounce your name right, but is it Karina, what state are you from? I mean, that would be interesting. So it sounds like they're doing a combination of students on IEPs attending summer school and ESY. And that could be one way that schools can offer a more inclusive experience, right? But some of the other things that you want to look at is other options in your community. When we're talking about, bringing inclusion into ESY. So one thing that I always suggest to parents is to look at what already exists in your community. There are sometimes homework clubs. If you're near a college or a university, a lot of times the college students will do tutoring in groups, and that might be, a setting that you want your child to be in, and that could be for extended school year services. If your child is working on social skills, maybe looking at what your Park and Rec offers, anybody, right? It's not a special Park and Rec class, but a Park and Rec class can be a way for your child to work on those social skills, and look at the goals that are currently in their IEP. And before you go to the meeting, kind of brainstorm of how can this Park and Rec activity help my child, maintain those social skills that they've already learned during the school year. So it's kind of like thinking outside of the box. But, if your community sends home like a Park and Rec calendar for the summer, look through there and you can pretty much find different activities or classes that could be helpful for your child. And that could be something that you talk about as far as an extended school year option. Another option that parents have gotten is they really think that their child needs that one-to-one kind of tutoring over the summer, and you can request that. And I don't know why, but sometimes schools are like, no, we can't do that. And it's like, yes, you can. I've worked with parents in a few different states, and that was the case. They wanted that one-on-one tutoring because that's what their child needed. And we were able to get that in their extended school year service plan. So just keep thinking outside of the box because there's probably a lot of different options. And Jennifer says, yes, the dates given by our district, usually a month and 1 week. Yeah. And, usually they start a few weeks after school is ended, take off the week of 4th of July. But like I said, maybe for your child, it's like you want it throughout all 3 of those summer months, or maybe you want it to start at the end of July and go into August right before the school year starts. So you can, just kind of discuss the dates with the IEP team and see if you can't get consensus to look outside of what they typically offer. So let's see, I want to make sure I don't miss any of your other comments, so keep them coming. So let's look at these 3 shocking truths about extended school year, and it would help if I showed you this slide. So yeah, it's like kind of amazing. And even I think seasoned advocates, teachers, administrators, I bet they would probably be also shocked to learn some of these. So you will learn some inside information that you can then share with others. So the first shocking truth is extended school year is not even mentioned in the federal IDEA law. And it's like, what? How can this be? And it's true. It's true. It's true. So if you are one of those people that like to look up statutes and regulations, I can help you there too. So I can give you a link to the Federal Department of Ed. But believe me, I'm an advocate. I'm not an attorney, so I can't give you legal advice. But it is not mentioned. in the federal law at all. So it's like, really, like, where did this come from then? Why do we even talk about extended school year? Well, it's mentioned in the regulations. Usually something is, talked about first in the law, and then they have regulations that come out about it. But extended school year, it's not in the law, but it is in the IDEA regulations. Now, here's another shocking truth. There's no criteria for ESY in the regulations. And it's like, what? So how can it talk about extended school year, but then not tell you what's the criteria to determine if a student is eligible or not? And again, that's why that key is find out what your state regulations say, because that's going to show you the information that you need. Again, you just always want to keep on top of that. I probably said that enough. I think you got the point, right? The third shocking truth, ESY is not only for summer. What? Yes. Traditionally, we have those spring meetings and talk about your child and whether or not they're going to be eligible for ESY. But guess what? When you look at school calendars, there are a lot of schools now that are on year-round schedules. And that looks totally different than a traditional calendar year. So if your child has a 2 or 3 week break for a fall break, plus 2 or 3 weeks for winter and spring and in between sessions, your child is eligible for any time when there is that longer break in the school calendar. So it's not just a Monday holiday or something, but an actual break. So many of us, and I think teachers too, really think about ESY as, oh, that only happens in the summer, but that's not true. Of course, if you talk about that for having ESY services at another time during the year, you are going to get pushback, right? Because you're asking for something that they normally don't do. And we know when you do that, usually people are like, no, that's not what we do in our district. But again, make a request in writing, have an official IEP meeting, and have a discussion about it. Or have some meetings ahead of time with the principal and/or special ed teacher and/or special ed director. Talk about it so you kind of lay some groundwork, but then you always want to have that official IEP meeting. And if you come to agreement, then the IEP can be amended and your child can get extended school year services for other breaks during the year too. So think about that and know that that is also a possibility for your child. So I keep forgetting I have to show the slides to you. That would help. So before we leave, I wanted to show you again that tomorrow we're having a super duper advocacy masterclass right here at my Visions and Voices Together Facebook page. It will be at noon Mountain Time, which is 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central Time, or 11 a.m. Pacific Time. So I try to plan it around where people might be able to take lunch breaks at work. So bring your lunch and you will be happy if you are there, because we're going to not only give you some awesome advocacy tips, but we have some pretty awesome prizes that we're going to be giving out too. So if you want to know more about the masterclass, just let me know in the comments and I can make sure to give you the link for that. Now I'm going to check and see if we have any other comments. So Anita says that in Virginia, the dates for ESY have always been predetermined. So Anita, yeah, and if you mention that P word, predetermined, it will perk up people's ears. So you might want to write a specific email. And tonight I have a show on that for our IEP scavenger hunt group, and we're going to be talking about a specific way to word your request, your emails of, this is my observation, and you don't make any judgments. My observation has been that our district has traditionally predetermined the dates from this. You can talk about how that doesn't meet your child's needs. You can make a specific request. I think one of the big things, and I think it's my last slide here, is one of the big things that I think is important is to know that what you accept continues. So if we continue to accept that dates are going to be predetermined, guess what? That's what we're going to keep having happen. So that's why you need to be out there speaking up for your child. And Jennifer says, wow, game changer. I'm so glad you're here, Jennifer. And Becky says, we are told the dates. Our district does not have enough staff, volunteers to work. Unfortunately, staffing can be a problem. I mean, teachers want to take off for summer vacation too. However, that's not your problem, right? So, we can recognize that. We can honor that that's a struggle for the district, but we don't have to accept that. If this is something that your child is eligible for, this is something that the district has to be offering, and they have to be accountable for that. So those conversations need to be happening, because it's just like during the school year, the services that your child gets are not determined by how much money the district has to hire somebody or whether or not they can find somebody. That's not a factor in what your child needs to get in order to have that free, appropriate public education. So that's another dialogue that we need to keep having with our district people. And Becky says, sometimes staff tends to change halfway through the program. Yeah, and that's so one of the things that I would say when you're talking about extended school year service is to talk about the need for your child to have that routine and consistency, for the teacher that's going to be providing the services to know what your child's strengths and needs are, to really be able to tap into those strengths. Because we know when there's turnover in staff, it's like, there goes another, week or two of the summer of the staff trying to get to know your child better. So it sounds like, Becky, in your district, they're really struggling with staff. And that, my guess, is something that probably, is also seen by who they hire for their special ed teachers for the district throughout the school year. So that's, a systemic, kind of red flag for your school district. And that will take even probably more like policy action advocacy than just individual advocacy for your child. So sometimes it helps if you can gather a group of parents that also want to see changes for, in this example, extended school year. And there are a number of things that you can do to be proactive about making those changes in your school. So let's see. Oh, good. So she was saying here, ESY is different from summer school. Yeah, and it should be different. unless that's going to be appropriate for your child to, go to the summer school program instead. I mean, that could be an example of thinking outside of the box. But it still, the only thing is, the one red flag maybe is to make sure that it's still individualized for your child. And April said, I was under the impression that the dates depend on the school calendar, which is determined once a year. And that's what they might tell you, April, but I don't think that's true. The school calendar is a pretty global thing that, the school board will vote on, and sometimes they vote for, 2 or 3 years down the road what the school calendar is going to be. And one of the big goals for that is to make sure there's enough instructional days throughout the year, throughout the 9 months or whatever the school year. Secondary teachers usually want the first semester to end before Christmas break. So there's all these little things that they kind of consider for the school calendar. But your child, because your child is on an IEP, they get individualized services in order to receive FAPE, which is that free appropriate public education. So yeah, ESY is not to be predetermined. And most special ed directors know that predetermined word can be a real trigger for, I think we better get our act together. So sometimes you just drop those little words in your email, and you'll get noticed more, and usually there'll be some action that will happen to make some positive changes. So I love your comments and questions. You guys are cool. So Jennifer says that she'd like the link to the prior written notice. And yes, I'll come back later today and I'll put the link in for that video, because prior written notice is a very important thing, not only when you talk about extended school year, but when you have any IEP meeting and you make a request and it's been denied, even if it's been accepted, they need to be talking about the reasons why they, decided that, especially if it's been rejected, the information that they use to come to that decision. So all of that needs to be written down onto a prior written notice form, and you need to get a copy of that each time you have a meeting. But I'll give you the link for that video. And we'll keep rolling here. Sometimes this doesn't want to roll. Paula says, yes, that would be helpful. Prior written notice when to request. Yeah, and so I can send you the link to that also, Paula. April says, does that depend on the state? So I'm not quite sure which comment you're talking about, but most things depend on your state and what the state regulations say. The federal law gives you the bare minimum of what you and your child's rights are, and some states go beyond that minimum and even give you more rights and your child more rights. So that's why you always want to not only know what the federal regulations say, but look into what your state says. Hey, Cheryl. Cheryl is with us. Cheryl is an awesome advocate. Let me bring up your comment.
Hi there, Charmaine. Oops.
Isn't that funny? My Siri started talking. Yes, Cheryl says there's case law out of New York. And that's the one that I was referring to that went all the way up to the Second Circuit Court. And that's when they reviewed inclusion and how that correlates to extended school year. And they said that LRE doesn't take the summer off. So that was a really nice win for parents. Sometimes it feels like parents don't prevail very much. So it was nice to get that win. And Jennifer says, yes, my daughter is in general education with an aide. So yeah, so if that's what her school year services look like, then you want, that to be mirrored when you have extended school year services. So by only offering you a choice of this program in this building, for these dates, that's not going to be meeting your child's needs. But you have to know that if you're going to ask for something to be different, right, you're going to need to feel confident in how you can bring that up at the meeting and what kinds of things that you can have kind of at your fingertips to give support to what you're requesting, because that makes you feel more confident than when you're at your meetings. So Jennifer said, and what about having an aide during ESY if they're provided one during the school year? For sure, I would look at that. Once your child is eligible for ESY, once the IEP team agrees on that, then the second part of that is looking at the IEP, which goals do you want to concentrate on for extended school year? What do her services look like during the school year? How can we make sure that she's got that support also during extended school year? So for sure, I would bring that up at your meeting. Paula says, yes, I would love that too. Advocacy. So remind me, I probably said, type the word advocacy. So I don't know if you're talking about the prior written notice, Paula, or if there's another thing that I said, oh, I'll share that with you. It might be the link for the federal statute and regulations and resources. If that's what you're looking for, let me know. And what I can do actually is post these in the description of the video. So then even if you didn't ask for it while watching us live or on the replay, that you'll still be able to see those links that I've mentioned here. Michelle says, our school has ESY set for the same weeks in July every year. Yeah, and that's because probably everybody just figures that's what ESY is. So families plan their vacation of nope, can't go on a vacation in July. We know that's when ESY is. We got to go in June or August. And that's a red flag when they predetermine those dates. So you need to request a meeting and talk about that. Nancy, look at you. So somebody had asked for the Virginia link for ESY. And so she gave us the link right here. She said, go to this link and then in the search area, type ESY and you'll get an Adobe file with the regulations. So cool. Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of, kind of being a detective to find where things are in state regulations. But cool. Now we know that for Virginia. Look at Patrick is on it. You guys are our researchers. We like it. We need researchers. Jennifer says, one summer the district told me they couldn't offer OT because they didn't have staff. By the time I was done, they had contracted the services out for my daughter. So look at you, Jennifer. So I should do a congratulations. Yay. We love examples of when things work. So look at here. It was like, I think you're still obligated to provide that occupational therapy. And often what districts are doing now with therapists, if they don't have that person on their staff, is they will contract with private OTs or other therapists to provide services. So there's usually a way to provide that, and we just have to kind of be flexible in how we figure that out. And Jennifer says, I believe we get 2 weeks off for winter. and she's from Antelope, California. Yeah, and so, it depends. Some students, 2 weeks can be a very long time, and it can really cause stress and regression and recoupment kinds of issues. So look at it for not just the summertime, but for other breaks during the school year too. Patrick would like to know more about the master class. So great, I'll come back and give you kind of an outline of some of the things that we're going to cover. It's going to be tomorrow, Friday at noon Mountain Time, right here on my Visions and Voices Together. So it's a special edition that we're doing tomorrow. So I hope you can be there with us. And Tony says, if your child's making adequate progress. Yeah, and that's where you want to, politely ask for them to show you the data that your child's making adequate progress, and see exactly how they're measuring that and if that's really the case or not, right? So it's kind of like trust, but verify. Arlie is here. Hey, and she, wants information about the masterclass too. Yay. Oh. And Laura says, are we able to request services to be provided in a different setting? My child goes to a summer camp near the school that's better for socialization, but we would love speech to be provided for him at that location, not traveling to school for just that service. And exactly, that's a very, excellent example of having it be individualized for your child. So, and especially when working on social skills, and we know communication and speech, services can really help us with those pragmatic, social language skills. Being at summer camp where you have other kids to draw from, I mean, that's like perfect. That's an example of like push-in services, but instead of the speech therapist coming into the general ed classroom, like maybe they do during the school year, the speech person could push in the services at the summer camp. So exactly, yeah, you can make that request, and if they deny it, then you just politely say, could you please put that on a prior written notice form and give that to me? And then that creates a paper trail that, we can talk about how you can, kind of step up your advocacy. But you always want, if something is denied, to get that prior written notice form with that written down for you. So let's see. Oh, April's talking about the magic IEP wand. Well, I do have a magic IEP wand. And maybe I should bring this out tomorrow for our masterclass, and we'll go poof. And it will solve not only all your extended school year service problems, but it will solve all your child's IEP problems. The magic IEP wand. And Jennifer, I'm so glad you're here. And she has been loving it. So great. And if you know other friends that could use this information, make sure that you tell them about our show today so they can also get in on the fun. So Sarah is in our IEP scavenger hunt group. And she says, I have to go back and listen to everything in replay. But we are in a very tiny school district with almost no ESY services even provided. We pushed hard for it last year and received a total of 13 hours over the course of the summer, 1 hour a couple times a week for 5 weeks. They are now saying that they don't have data that there was recoupment because he basically demonstrated avoidance behavior the entire summer and then during assessments before and after. And we're trying to use, they're trying to use that as an excuse that services are not warranted this summer. How do I push for more services and not less? So, Sarah, thanks for bringing this up, because I think this probably happens to a lot of districts and with other families. So, one idea is to look at what other small school districts are there in your area? Are there ways that the school districts can, combine their funding and hire, private therapists or whatever to provide services, and that person travels to the other districts, but it's a way for small school districts to collaborate. I think one of the things that you really need to be able to talk to the staff about is, they have this data that shows one thing, but as a mom, that his avoidance behaviors were like a huge reason why the data shows what it shows. And so what is the reasoning behind that? Is it because it was somebody totally new working with him and he, wasn't comfortable with that person? Was it because the routine was different? So to try to pinpoint what wasn't working in the previous years for ESY, and, saying, what will it take? This is a great question to ask. What will it take? What will it take for us to change how ESY was done from previous years so we can make sure that my child is successful? And the amount of time, that is, like we've said throughout the show, is to be individualized. For sure, I would look up your state regulations and even bring a copy of them when you go to a meeting where you're, maybe you want to amend the IEP and get more service time for extended school year. The other thing to think about is sometimes less is more. So depending on your child, if they're not going to be happy and comfortable and feel safe in the extended school year environment, having more time for them to feel uncomfortable, unsafe is not a good thing. So one, we want to correct that first, but then we want to really say, how much of this summertime do we want to devote to extended school year services? And then look at what specific goals in the IEP that you think that your child needs to work on through the ESY services, because they don't necessarily have to work on every goal that's in the IEP. Usually it's the goals where your child hasn't made much progress, or maybe, like I said, they're emerging with those skills. So ESY usually doesn't work on each goal in the IEP. It depends on the circumstances. But yes, so that's a great question. And we can talk about that more, Sarah, in our IEP scavenger hunt. So let's see. I'm not sure if I see any other comments. So thank you all for being here today. We have a live show here on my Visions and Voices Together Facebook page each Thursday at noon Mountain Time. And I would love for you to join us again. Remember, tomorrow is our super duper advocacy masterclass. So look for that. I'll be posting more information about that. But I thank you for being here. And I think you have been like the most involved and interactive. So I just love that, because I want to be able to answer your specific questions and make it helpful for you and not just do this general presentation. So thanks for asking questions and putting in your comments. And I shall see you maybe tomorrow at noon. If not, next Thursday at noon. So take care, and we shall talk with you later. So make sure